Summary of the poem Poetry. In his poem entitled Poetry, Pablo Neruda vividly narrates how he got creativity. Writing poetry is a passion that overpowers him. He had a strong impulse to write poetry. At the beginning, he did not have confidence. He was without a face before poetry arrived. By the end of the poem, he finds himself as part of the void, mystery, and abyss. He finds himself going with the flow and expresses his delight in writing the first line. Using beautiful imagery, the poet expresses his joy of being part of the creation. The poem can be divided into three phases. In the beginning, the poet is inspired, but he is not able to produce great poetry. In the second phase, he starts writing the first faint lines. In the third phase, he is carried away by poetry. He is in a new world. The tone of the poem is ecstatic. Beautiful imageries, rhyme, and rhythm makes the poem an excellent piece. He uses the figures of speech personification when says poetry arrived in search of me. പോയട്രി എന്ന കവിതയിൽ പാബ്ലോ നെരുഡോ എന്ന കവി തനിക്ക് എങ്ങനെയാണ് സൃഷ്ടിപരത ലഭിച്ചത് എന്ന് വിവരിക്കുന്നു. കവിതയെ ഒരു വ്യക്തിയായി ചിത്രീകരിക്കുന്നു. കവിത എന്നെ തേടി വന്നു. കവിത അവനെ കീഴടക്കുന്ന ഒരു വികാരമാണ്. അവന് കവിത എഴുതുവാനുള്ള ഒരു അഭിനിവേശം ഉണ്ടായി. ആദ്യം അവന് ആത്മവിശ്വാസമില്ലായിരുന്നു. കവിത വരുന്നതിന് മുമ്പ് അവൻ മുഖമില്ലാത്തവനായിരുന്നു. കവിതയുടെ അവസാന ഭാഗത്ത് അവൻ ശൂന്യതയുടെ, നിഗൂഢതയുടെ, ഗർത്തത്തിൻ്റെ ഭാഗമാണെന്ന് സ്വയം കണ്ടെത്തുന്നു. ആദ്യ വരികൾ എഴുതിയ സന്തോഷം അവൻ പ്രകടിപ്പിക്കുന്നു. സുന്ദരമായ രൂപകങ്ങളിലൂടെ അവൻ തൻ്റെ സന്തോഷം പ്രകടിപ്പിക്കുന്നു. 3 ഘട്ടങ്ങളിലായി കവിതയെ തിരിക്കാം. ആദ്യഘട്ടത്തിൽ അവൻ പ്രചോദിതനാണ്, പക്ഷേ കവിത എഴുതാൻ സാധിക്കുന്നില്ല. രണ്ടാം ഘട്ടത്തിൽ അവൻ നേർത്ത വഴികൾ എഴുതി തുടങ്ങുന്നു. മൂന്നാം ഘട്ടത്തിൽ അവൻ കവിതയാൽ സംവഹിക്കപ്പെടുന്നു. രൂപകങ്ങളും അലങ്കാരങ്ങളും താളവും കവിതയെ സുന്ദരമാക്കുന്നു. Questions and answers. 1. Do you think the speaker in the poem earnestly wishes to be a poet? Which line says so? He did not have the confidence to write poems at first, but soon became aware of the impulse to create poetry. Answer. Poetry arrived in search of me. I don't know. I don't know where it came from. 2. What is the figure of speech used in the expression poetry arrived? Answer. Personification. When the poet says that poetry arrived in search of me, the reader gets the impression that the poem has come alive and is seeking the writer to relate his experience and write about everything that he feels. Poetry gave his life meaning, so much so that he personified it and gave it the ability to touch him the way only a human being can. 3. Winter is a season when everything seems frozen and lifeless, whereas the river represents the flow of life. Find out a similar expression of contrast from the poem. Answer. No, there were not voices, there were no words, nor silence. 4. What was the poet's condition before poetry arrived? Answer. The poet was without a face before poetry arrived. He did not have any identity. 5. What happened to the poet when poetry arrived? Answer. When poetry arrived, the poet did not know what was happening to him. He did not know what to say and was not aware of what he saw. He thought that he was becoming feverish. 6. How did the poet show that after the arrival of poetry, his imagination knew no bounds? Answer. He felt that something like a fire emerged from his soul and he made his own way, understanding the fire. 7. Poetic intuition is like seeing without eyes. Which line says so? Answer. My eyes were blind and something started in my soul. 8. What does fever or forgotten wings indicate? Answer. Fever indicates the sudden changes happening to the poet when he encounters creativity. The image of forgotten wings tells us that the poet is faced with the reality of discovering his creativity which lay forgotten. 9. How does the vast, infinite, and complex universe unfold itself before the poet in this poem? Answer. The poet perceives the beautiful and mysterious things in nature and shows how they slowly unfold before him. He feels that creativity is infinite like the universe. 10. What do you think is referred to as fire and flowers? Answer. Fire means spark in the mind of the poet that arises or emerges at the moment of inspiration. Flowers refer to the blooming or realization of his creative thoughts. 11. I wheeled with the stars. What does the poet mean by this? Answer. I wheeled with the stars means I journeyed along with the stars. The poet's mind journeyed along the unexplored realms. 12. How does the poet express his delight of writing the first line of poetry? Answer. The poet expresses his delight in writing the first line of poetry by saying that his heart breaks loose on the wind. Textual questions. 1. What is the theme of the poem? Answer. The poem is about the inner fire, the fire of poetic inspiration, as felt by the poet. The poet shares his passion of writing poetry and his experience of being impressed by creativity. He feels the urge to write. In this inspired state of mind, his imagination soars high. 2. What are the expressions used by the poet to show the inspired moments? Answer. Some of the expressions used by the poet to show the inspired moments are poetry arrived in search of me, summoned from the branches of night, deciphering that fire. Something started in my soul. It touched me. The heavens unfastened and opened, drunk with the great starry void, veiled with the stars, heart broke loose on the wind, etc. 3. What is the tune of the poem? Answer. Ecstatic. Exam-based questions. 1. Prepare a profile of Pablo Neruda. Hints. Birth 1904. Nationality Chilean. Career poet, diplomat and politician. Pen name Pablo Neruda from the Sslc poet Jan Neruda. Honors and awards Nobel Prize for Literature 1971. Style Surrealist poems, historical epics, political manifestos and a prose autobiography. Speciality wrote in green ink, personal symbol of desire and hope. Death 1973. Answer. Profile of Pablo Neruda, Neftali Ricorda Reyes Baselto. Pablo Neruda was a Chilean poet, diplomat and politician. He was born in 1904. He derived his pen name Pablo Neruda from the Sslc poet Jan Neruda. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1971. He wrote in a variety of styles and his works include surrealistic poems, historical epics, political manifestos and a prose autobiography. He often wrote in green ink, which was his personal symbol for desire and hope. He died in 1973. Analyzing textual poem. 1. Who is the speaker in the poem Poetry? Answer. The poet. 2. What is the name of the poet? Answer. Neftali Ricardo Reyes Baselto. 3. What is the pen name of the poet? Answer. Pablo Neruda. 4. What did the poet do to get the talent to write poems? Answer. The poet did nothing, but poetry came in search of him. 5. What is the figure of speech used in the expression poetry arrived? Answer. Personification. The reader gets the impression that the poetry has come alive and is seeking the writer. 6. What is personification? Answer. When an inanimate thing is given human attributes or characteristics, it is known as personification. 7. Give an instance of assonance. Answer. Winter, river. 8. Was his poetry in the form of words or how? Answer. No, they were not voices, words, or silence. 9. From where was the poet summoned to write poetry? Answer. The poet was summoned from a street from the branches of night. These were the inspired moments for the poet to write poetry. 10. What was the poet's condition before poetry arrived? Answer. The poet was without identity. 11. What does the expression without a face suggest? Answer. The expression without a face suggests having no identity. 12. And it touched me. What does it refer to? Answer. It refers to poetry. 13. Find the figure of speech from the line, there I was without a face. Answer. Hyperbole. 14. What is a hyperbole? Answer. It is a bold overstatement or extravagant exaggeration of fact, used either for a serious or a comic effect. 15. What happened to the poet when poetry arrived? Answer. He did not know what to say. 16. What did the poet do when poetry arrived? Answer. He made his own way to write poetry. 17. How did the poet feel his first line? Answer. His first line was faint, without substance, and it was a pure nonsense. 18. What does the fever or forgotten wings indicate? Answer. Fever indicates the sudden changes happening to the poet when he encounters creativity. Forgotten wings tells us that the poet is faced with the reality of discovering his creativity which lay forgotten. 19. Find the figure of speech from the line fever or forgotten wings. Answer. Metaphor. 20. How does the universe unfold itself before the poet in the poem? Answer. Through his creativity, the poet finds the vast expanse of the universe before his inner eyes. 21. What is meant by riddle with arrows? Answer. It means making many holes with arrows. 22. What is referred to as fire and flowers? Answer. Fire means the spark in the mind of the poet at the moment of inspiration. Flowers means the realization of his creative thought. 23. What does the poet find himself as part of? Answer. The poet finds that he is part of void, mystery, and abyss. 24. What does the poet mean by I wheel with the stars? Answer. I wheeled with the stars means the poet journeyed along with the stars. 25. How does the poet express his delight in writing the first line of poetry? Answer. The poet expresses his delight in writing the first line of the poetry by saying that his heart breaks loose on the wind. 26. What is the figure of speech used in palpitating plantation? Answer: personification. 27. Give two instances of alliteration in the poem. Answer: 1. The first faint of line. 2. Planets palpitating plantations. 28. Why did the poet use the metaphor fever of forgotten wings in the poem? Answer: the poet uses metaphors in order to heighten the imagery and to deepen the sentiments he is trying to convey.